The old man seems to have lost a step here. The speech was predictable, but it wasn't received anywhere near at the level where it used to be, not just by the people in the room, but by the country as a whole. As people are tuning out to this stuff now. The
Yeah.
season has ended in the reality show. The shark has been jumped, as we say in the U.S. It's tiring. People are ready to move on. It's about Trump fatigue syndrome. People are just tired of it now, and they want to see something different.
This afternoon, every Sunday, we're taking the temperature of US politics, bringing together two experts from either side of the political divide. Well, today we're delighted to be joined by Marianne Williamson. Welcome, Marianne.
Thank
and
you.
thanks for
I'm
being
glad
there.
to be here.
Thank you. You're an author, a lecturer, an activist who was a 2020 and 2024 Democratic candidate for President of the United States. Mike Madrid is a Republican consultant for 30 years and who in 2020 co-founded the Lincoln Project, a Republican anti-Trump organisation. Mike, you're also welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, look, tensions are rising, friends, between President Trump and Senate Republicans over the Senate's inability to pass the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. I'll get there eventually. Also known as the SAVE Act, the Republican signature piece of election reform, which requires voter ID at the ballot box and proof of citizenship to register, follows more than a year of continued efforts by the Trump administration to consolidate sensitive state voter data into federal hands. So White House Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt said on Thursday that President Trump's patience with Senate Majority Leader John Thune and Senate Republicans is running low due to their inability to pass this legislation. Mike, let me begin with you. Is there generally support among Republicans for this bill?
No, there seems to be widespread opposition. I don't see how they get to the votes to even bring this to the floor, which is really a remarkable rebuke against Donald Trump, the President of the United States, and his signature legislation here, at least during this session. While the concept of having things like voter identification, the concept remains quite high amongst voters, the actual implementation, when people find out more and more about it, especially when they find out it's driven by Donald Trump for these partisan political purposes, support levels collapse, and the Senate's refusal to bring it up reflects that.
Well, what is this bill really? I mean, if we can just break through the fog of potential politics, what do you think it's trying to do?
Well, in a nutshell, it's trying to undermine elections. I mean, that's what Donald Trump is trying to do. The irony is, he's consistently, since he was first elected in 2016, tried to undermine the integrity of the electoral system in the United States for his own, I would argue, nefarious purposes. It's one of the reasons why I spent most of my life and career with the past decade fighting and opposing this. This is just another brick in the wall there. It's another step down that dangerous road. So look, what he's trying to do is actually a form of voter suppression, which is try to keep people from polling. The irony is most of the voters who would be affected by this are actually his own voters. But what he does do with this is he sets up the predicate that this was somehow an election that was stolen because if people hadn't listened to him, that all of these quote unquote, undocumented or illegal voters that never should have been voting in the first place wouldn't have slipped through the cracks and won in races that he lost.
Yeah, I mean, Marianne, we're talking with Mike, who's a Republican like the old days. So I don't know if there's going to be huge grounds of disagreement with what he's saying there. But why don't you give us a sense of your reaction to this bill and where it's at?
Well, there's no disagreement at all. He's absolutely right. Mike said this is an effort to undermine the election. They claim that it's a voter ID law. It's actually a voter suppression law. And part of the rigging, it's a systematic effort to rig the election on his behalf. And it is particular anathema to women in the United States because it will make it extremely difficult for married women who have to prove they changed their name. Married women who changed their names, right? They now took their husband's name. They have to not only prove that they're citizens, but they have to show their birth certificate. So the birth certificate was another name. And then they have to do more than even the marriage certificate, all kinds of hoopla that people have to go through to prove that, in fact, they're able to vote. They have voter eligibility. And like many other things that Trump is doing, he's just trying to exhaust people to the point where people will just throw their hands up. There will be all kinds of, if the SAVE Act were to pass, there would be so much confusion, so much nefarious activity that is potential on that day with poll workers, et cetera. And as Mike said, that's exactly what he wants. He sees this as imperative, the SAVE Act, if he is to make sure that he wins, well, in his mind wins, quote unquote, in 2026.
And Mike, it's the confusion that Marianne mentions there, that's kind of like oxygen to the president, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the currency he trades in.
Yeah.
Wherever on basically every policy front, but particularly when it comes to elections, the whole goal is to what Marianne just said, which is to create confusion. That environment undermines confidence, and what it does is it bolsters his own base to do things that are more violent, more aggressive, and attack institutions itself. That's the way you beat an institution, is not necessarily through policy changes, which he does not have the support to do, but through creating the lack of confidence in the system itself and allowing himself to go and attack it.
So what are we to make of what's happening, Marianne, in the Senate then? Is this a battle, a proper battle of the clash of the titans, so to speak, or is it just business as unusual?
Well, the crisis in the Republican Party is how few of them have a spine anymore. And of course, Mike's work has been speaking to that for quite a while.
Yeah.
So you have someone like John Cornyn, who tried to go along with the president on most things, but because he didn't go with him on everything, lost his primary because of the president's support for someone else. So Cornyn feels no loyalty to the president. Cassidy for the same reason. And Tillis because he's leaving soon. There are other people that are still question marks. Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski. It's very important to remember that many of these Republican leaders, particularly Republican senators, are known behind the scenes to say he's a nut job. He's out of his mind.
Yeah.
And to even tell Democrats, we're glad you're trying to stand up to him. So it remains to be seen. Some of these people are saying, well, I'm going to lose, at this point, I'm going to lose my election, my race, if I do go along with the president. So Mike would probably know more than I do about what's going on within those ranks. But some of these people are saying, no, I won't play along any longer.
Well, this is the question. Is the air going out of the tires here as the administration heads towards the midterms, Mike, I should say, or is that just wishful thinking on behalf of a bunch of people?
Well, as one of those wishful thinkers for the past decade, it's been more than once that I've, thought, okay, this is the time where the Republicans are finally going to break the fever swamp. But this does seem to be a very unique circumstance because of what Marianne just pointed out. The president has made enough enemies. He only needs to make a handful in the Senate that are going to lose anyway. So they literally have nothing to lose. They've already lost. Add on to that the fact that we don't even know if Mitch McConnell is alive, and the votes aren't there. The votes are not there on the Senate side to put up a vote with any sort of certainty. So the strategy seems to be by Donald Trump at this point is to be able to use this as a blame game anyway, whether he wins or loses. The measure is to say, if you would have passed voter ID, as I said, if you would have federalized elections as I outlined, we wouldn't have had the House lose by 25 seats and the Senate lose by 2 or 3 seats, and the Republican Party and Donald Trump would be okay. That's the strategy. That's the plan. Is it a good one? It's not a good one, but it's probably the only one he's got left to play.
So, Mike, before everyone writes in to say, are the three of you there today suffering from a particularly bad dose of Trump derangement syndrome? I should remind people that you are indeed a Republican. Do you have anything good to say about Donald Trump?
Just that there's, a couple years left in the remainder of this, but let me acknowledge the Trump derangement syndrome. I absolutely am guilty of suffering probably the worst case in the country because Trumpism is treason, and so I will stand up against that all day long.
Yeah.
I'm proud to be against him, proud to carry TDS, and we'll fight this till my dying day.
Because the Lincoln Project is, I find, one of the most compelling campaigns I've ever seen in the history of campaign political advertising since it's come into its existence. My daughters regularly will laugh at me as I look at YouTube at the ads, and they're saying, "You're still looking at those things," and I am, because I just feel, I thought they were, I still do think they're very important, and sometimes I'm quite taken aback at the fact that they didn't impact as much as they could, or dare I say it, should have.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we weren't together after the 2020 election. My one regret is that we didn't stick it out to 2024. I didn't know that we would necessarily be needed as much. So there are a couple people still involved and engaged. But yes, I think looking back, should we have the 8 of us that founded it stuck together? Yeah, we should have. I think we just believed that the country had moved on and people had come to their senses. And unfortunately, in the United States, that doesn't seem to be the case at the moment. Okay,
we're going to move on to Tuesday, because on Tuesday, New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani sparked a fevered debate after issuing this video statement.
Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal, the architect of a horrific genocide against the Palestinian people. My administration has reviewed every avenue available under applicable law to determine whether New York City could execute the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant if Benjamin Netanyahu came here. It is clear that we do not have the independent legal authority to enforce this warrant. The federal government, however, does, and I call on them to join the ICC and execute this warrant. And I want to be equally clear. Benjamin Netanyahu is not welcome in New York City, nor is any other war criminal at large.
All right, New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani. Marianne, the the Israeli Prime Minister is expected to visit New York City in September for the UN General Assembly. I'm sure you know that. And President Donald Trump has said that Netanyahu would not be arrested in any way, shape or form while in the US. That this was never going to happen necessarily. So why say it?
He's saying it because he's speaking to a larger issue. Just saying he's going to, or he can't, or he would if he could arrest Netanyahu is not the ultimate goal here. He always knew he had no legal authority to arrest Netanyahu. He's speaking to a larger audience and to a larger project. And that project has to do with the desire to completely delegitimize the idea that Israel even has a right to exist. That's what he is speaking to. That's what he's trying to foster. And that's what makes so many Jews uncomfortable. There are many Jews, there are many Israelis who do not agree with Netanyahu. The idea that the behavior of the Israeli government in Gaza is atrocious is a fairly common one. But there's something bigger behind all this, and that's the issue of whether or not Israel even has a right to exist. That's the listening that Mamdani is speaking into.
Okay, Mike, the Democratic voters' support for Israel appears to be shifting, with the recent poll suggesting 58% of Democrats believe the US is too supportive of Israel. That's up from 45% in 2024. So do you think, is Mamdani just reflecting the position of many people in his party and an issue that got him elected?
Well, he certainly is reflecting where the moving parts of the Democratic base are going. Frankly, he's moving with the parts where the Republican base is moving too. But let me say this: I think he's way out of bounds with this. Whether you agree with him or not, he knows this is not within the jurisdiction of the mayor of New York City. And while there is a unique role for a mayor for the size of New York City on global issues like climate change, for example, and being part of those solutions, throwing his hat in the ring and saying that he would be arrested and that his administration is investigating their legal authority to do that is a very, very dangerous slope to be treading down, because once that administration changes hands, what's to stop with any other mayor using whatever powers they have to continue to take the same positions with political opposition? So I get the politics of this, but for a mayor who's done a remarkably good job of being very popular by fixing potholes and keeping buses running on time, he's dramatically overstepped his appropriate role here, and I think that he needs to back off from it right away.
He strikes, Marianne, please.
I think there's something even more than that he does not have the authority or the role of basically guiding U.S. foreign policy. It's that he is neglecting and abandoning the role that he has to protect all the citizens of New York. There are almost 1 million Jews in New York City, and Jews are afraid. There is a huge upsurge in anti-Semitic behavior, whether you look at social media, whether you look at doxing of Jewish businesses, whether you look at the fact that the man was, stabbed with a screwdriver the very next day in the middle of the day in 86th Street and Central Park West. So we need more than for Mamdani to keep his mouth shut, some people believe. I think he certainly has a right to talk about what he wants to talk about. We need his allyship, we need his attention, and we need his care when it comes to the Jews of New York City and to the Jews of America, to the extent to which he's speaking to a larger audience. He says he cares. He does speak. He's a fascinating character, and many of us have very mixed reactions to him. On one hand, he stresses moral clarity, and I think he means it. He stresses universality of human rights, and I think he means it. But there is an odd, even nefarious, sinister way in which he leaves Jews out of that conversation.
John Fetterman, the Democratic senator, called Mamdani a clown over this. He said, "You're a mayor. You can fix a pothole, you can take out the trash, but you can't order people to arrest anybody any more than I could, or I could have him, Mamdani, arrested if he goes to Pennsylvania." If people in his own party can't justify this intervention, I suppose the question is who can. And indeed, he always strikes me as being a bit larger than life. He's not typical of a mayor of any city, and I would dare suggest nearly that he has one eye on maybe a bigger prize down the line, and that he's not just a local politician, and he's too big to be in that lane.
Well, he is not a clown, and to think he is a clown is to vastly underrate him. He is a brilliant politician. He is brilliant, and on issues where I and many others agree with him, his economic populism, his speaking to the dignity of all citizens, his speaking to the need of the Democratic Party to reclaim its traditional values of unabashed advocacy for the working people of the United States, all that is fabulous. But he is speaking, as you just said, to something much larger than the citizenship of New York City. He is speaking to the entire pro-Palestinian movement, the part of it that does have to do with the delegitimization of the idea that Israel even has a right to exist.
And a big
That's
part
not
of his
clownish,
base.
but it is sinister.
Mike, it's not unusual in this part of the world for a local mayor of a big city to actually reach the highest office in the land, as evidenced by the new Prime Minister.
Andy Burnham.
There you go, just this week. So, there's a
But he wasn't born in the United States, if I may point that out, because Danny was not born in the United States.
Okay. So, Mike, I was just offering that you seem to be suggesting that he's just the mayor and therefore stay in his lane.
Well, I will say it is inappropriate for a mayor to do this. The only reason that you're doing this is to instigate a broader conversation, which is totally outside of his jurisdiction. But it is not just sinister; it's dangerous. This is not just scary; it is an act beyond the scope of what he is supposed to be doing. And again, for somebody who is an astute politician who is doing a remarkably good job just by making trains run on time, this was a misstep. This brings him into a broader discussion, reaffirming people's original criticisms of him, giving them all the ammunition that they need politically to say, see, this is exactly what we were warning about. And they're right. This was not helpful to maintaining the social fabric and unity of New York City, certainly not the country. It's problematic within the Democratic Party, and it's extraordinarily inappropriate for a New York City mayor to be weighing in like
Fascinating strength of response from both of you. Intriguing. Okay, keep with us. Coming up, we'll hear who Mike and Marianne are nominating as the person they see as living the American dream this week. Back in a moment. Still talking away here during the breaks. It's great stuff. Welcome back. You're listening to Ryan Tubridy. Still joined by Mike Madrid, who has been a Republican consultant for 30 years and in 2020 co-founded the Lincoln Project, a Republican anti-Trump organisation. Marianne Williamson is an author, a lecturer, and activist. She just recommended a great book to me there. I wrote it down, called Hate Inc. Thank you, Marianne. Also a 2020 and 2024 Democratic candidate for President of the United States. Now, we'll get to the American dreams in a moment, but I wanted to get both your thoughts on the White House Correspondents' dinner, of course postponed by an alleged assassination attempt. Donald Trump spoke for more than an hour, including cracking this joke.
But just like my presidency, the second time is always better. It's always better. And the third time will be better yet.
Okay.
I'm only kidding.
No, only kidding. Okay, so Marianne, has he got the comedy chops, or are you just like horrified by that?
I'm horrified, and I think any serious thinking person who values the U.S. Constitution is horrified by the president even joking about wanting to run again. His performance at the White House Correspondents' dinner was very predictable. It was very mendacious. It was filled with attacks on his political opponents. It was filled with attacks on the press. You know, the night is meant to be a celebration of the free press, and we've never had a president who sought to undermine the free press like this president does.
It's a funny old night, Mike, the Correspondents' dinner, because, you know, there's a fine line between humour and insult, and it does have the feel of a roast to it. And I'm reminded of the time that President Obama really went hell for leather on Donald Trump's Citizen that time, and just kept going and going and going. Some people said it was nearly the genesis of his political campaign, because it was so offensive by Obama to Trump. So, you know, let's spread the commentary out a bit here.
Well, let's also recognize that Donald Trump spoke to that moment, spoke to that night, and actually was denying that he was so humiliated by it that he did use that as a moment to run for president. Now, 9 times out of 10 with Donald Trump, that projection is actually the tell. He's actually telling us that in fact is what it was, what happened. But I will say this, the old man seems to have lost a step here. The speech was predictable, but it wasn't received anywhere near at the level where it used to be, not just by the people in the room, but by the country as a whole. As people are tuning out to this stuff now. The season has ended in the reality show. The shark has been jumped, as we say in the U.S. It's tiring. People are ready to move on. It's about Trump fatigue syndrome. People are just tired of it now, and they want to see something different. So I think he's lost his magic.
Marianne.
I think that what Mike just referred to, though, is part of what's so dangerous, that all of this has become so normalized, that the most outrageous things, and what he says at a White House Correspondents' dinner is not the most outrageous thing, but it's all part of such an outrageous presidency. The fact that it has become normalized, the fact that people are so exhausted is dangerous. Our bar
$1.2 billion.
is so low, and so that's why these midterms are so important.
All right, let's end on a happy note, shall we, Marianne? Who's living the American dream this week as you see it?
Well, I don't want to be a downer here, but I don't think it's very happy. I don't think anybody is actually living the American dream, because how can you be living the American dream when it is at the expense of the fact that that dream is so suppressed by, at this point, the majority of American people? The American dream itself, the idea not just that you can succeed. Remember, that's not the American dream. The ideal of the American dream is that anyone, if they work hard enough, can live a dignified life and can actually thrive according to their own abilities. When there are so many obstacles to that, systematic obstacles for so many people, and when that is only growing, whether it has to do with people of color, whether it has to do with immigrants or women or LGBTQ or at this point Jews, then no, the dream is being smashed here. So anybody who happens to have made it into the club is fortunate enough to have made it into the club that we could say, oh, I'm living the American dream. If you have a conscience, then you say, yeah, but this isn't a dream when it's a nightmare for so many others.
That's pretty depressing, but it's a fine answer. A beautiful, articulate answer, I have to say. Mike, where are you? Have you somebody you'd like to nominate as candidate to live the American dream this week?
Yeah, I think last week, actually at the White House Correspondents' dinner, we saw a perfect example of who exactly Americanness is, American identity is, and what the best of us is that speaks to. That would be, in my estimation, Caitlin Collins.
Oh, yeah, okay.
A journalist who received an award, who stood up, shook the president's hand despite him insulting her, and showed that courage and class with dignity and with grace. Recognizing that she doesn't have to be loud and offensive and rude. She has to do her work, do her job. She's doing it remarkably and is absolutely fearless when it comes to standing up to what is troubling this country at this moment in time. That's what America is. That's what we were founded to be. That's what we continue to be with that spirit. And I'm proud of her work and what the way that she carried herself last week.
So just as a brief explainer to people who might know Caitlin Collins, she's a CNN journalist, a very fine journalist, very good at her job, very good at telling the story, as the best journalists will be. And she's constantly in the White House press room asking questions and being put down in a very dismissive way, whether it's by the press secretary or the president. And she takes it with a stoicism that not many people would have. Other people walk out of the room in a huff, but she keeps going. I think Mike makes a great point.
Well, I think what she is, it's not to me about the dream, but about the spirit of America. She's absolutely demonstrating the spirit of America. Yeah. The hell no to him. It's not an accident that she's a woman. He doesn't want any woman displaying power at this point, not if he can help it. So a woman such as her, who's actually standing up for the principles of this country, the principles of the Constitution. So I think it's also important to remember that there are millions of Caitlin Collins. Judges are standing up in absolutely heroic ways, and sometimes at great personal risk. There are people in local elections. There are people in local communities. There are people on the streets, not only in Minnesota, but elsewhere. So I think that she is a marvelous example of the spirit of America that's rising in resistance right now. But let's remember that millions of people are. None of us are alone in this.
You see, you just struck a more hopeful note there than you did in your first answer, Marianne.
They're both true.
They're both, two things can be true at the same time. So we can.
One was about the dream, one was about the spirit.
Yeah, okay. So let's go with the spirit for joy and the dream. The dream's in trouble, but the spirit's alive. How about that?
The spirit is alive. Do not count us out.
That sounds...
Americans are known by people such as yourself in countries such as this. We're sometimes slow to get there, but when we get there, we slam it like nobody's business.
That's for sure. Okay, well, thank you so much for that. Marianne Williamson, lovely to see you today in studio. Mike Madrid, thank you so much for joining us from across the Atlantic. Appreciate your time, both of you. And we'll do it again.